I had a two-part question for you, Armin, and I promise you it's not satire. It might sound like it, but it's a serious two-part question. So, just given that I'll call the junta allied forces inside Iran, the armed faction of the IRGC that are exerting political influence, are absolutely intent on sidelining and eventually eliminating the mullahs from the government. I know you had mentioned that it's difficult to quantify, but we estimate there's about roughly 5% of the population that what you call regime supporters. I would suspect, and maybe you can clarify this, that a good portion of that are actually not really regime supporters, but mullah supporters, basically cleric supporters. My question for you is what percentage of the regime supporters are you think cleric supporters? And the second part of the question is can you envision a scenario, theoretically, where the conflict within the regime got so pronounced that the basically the larger secular minded forces in Iran, the democratic forces, could be fighting side to side with the mullah supporters against the junta allied
Mm,
forces? And is that at all
right.
conceivable?
No, the second part, no. But so no, the regime supporters are considered to be the enemy by the anti-regime people. So it's like the separatists are the enemies of the Islamic Republic, but the Iranian people don't see them as allies. The pro-regime, the anti-regime Iranians would celebrate the pro-regime people turning against the regime, but they will not join them. They're disgusted by them. Am I understanding the question correctly?
No, it is. It's just I would expect that the junta allied forces will basically use the same tactics against the mullah supporters that they used against the democratic supporters in terms of their attempts to cling to power in the waning days of the regime. My understanding is most of the mullah supporters are largely unarmed and would
So
see.
there is no separation between. Okay, so even though we are seeing like a coup going from a mullah-led theocracy to an IRGC-led military dictatorship, going from turbans to boots, right? When it comes to regime supporters, they don't see that. Do you know what I mean? It's not a mullah versus IRGC. The vast majority of them just see them as all the regime. The division that they're mostly interested is armed forces versus diplomats, not mullah versus IRGC. Do you know what I mean?
No, I do think that's an accurate statement with regard to the current situation. I'm talking about a hypothetical future situation.
Yeah.
I'm running the game models and seeing that there could be a situation down the road where the conflict in that regime becomes so pronounced that you could have outright physical hostilities between the mullah supporting elements and the junta allied forces. So my question is in that
So
context only.
even if we get that extreme, the division would not be who's a mullah and who's like military, right? The division would be who is bending the knee to the Americans and who's not. So you could be a mullah like Rouhani or Khatami and we be considered a traitor, or you could be not a mullah like Ghalibaf, who's IRGC, technically IRGC, and also a traitor. But you could be a mullah that is like Nabavian, right? And you would continue to be an ally because you're one on this side, or you could be Vahidi, okay, and is a military man. So the division would not be based on. So even though our understanding of the power dynamics is that we're going from the Khamenei's being in charge, which is a mullah theocracy, to the Vahidis being in charge, which is a military dictatorship. From the perspective of regime supporters, the division would be more on who is liberal, treasonous liberal, West loving, appeasing, or Zionist infiltration, spy. I'm giving you a whole list of things that
Mhm.
they usually come up with, and who's not, right? Who is so? Let's say, for example, if I'm a pro regime person that I'm on Ghalibaf's side right now, right? I am I am just being more pragmatic. I'm like, we need to be more flexible, or else they're gonna fuck us up, or we're not gonna have anything less to defend. Like, I can see that, yeah, the ideals of the Islamic Republic is fine, but we need to be able to afford all of this stuff. And if we are not flexible, we're gonna go bankrupt soon. That's how I'm thinking. And the people who you consider on your side, they might be Mullah, they might be. It doesn't matter. You basically are divided by ideology, and rather than whether you are, because some mullahs are more pragmatic, some military people are leaders are more pragmatic, some mullahs are less pragmatic and more end of times ideology driven. Some mullahs are like that, and also some IRGC leaders are also like that. Do you know what I mean? Does that
I
answer your
do.
question?
Yeah, no,
Mm,
that makes sense. But again, I'm thinking about this from a self-interest standpoint within the regime,
mm,
because there was a time clearly when the Ayatollah had the firm grip on power. They basically prohibited the IRGC from involvement in politics. It was an anti-coup measure to check the Atesh. We're in a
mm,
situation now where the mullahs have been sidelined, and I would think that the supporters in the upper echelon for the mullah leadership are looking for a way to come back to power and sideline the IRGC. So their interest would technically be allied with the pro democracy forces if they thought they could steal the revolution away and reimpose an Ayatollah in the post regime chaos. I could
mm.
theoretically see a situation where the IRGC junta forces and the Mullah forces were in open conflict because of those competing self interests. The IRGC clearly does not want the return of any Ayatollah other than one they can control like a puppet.
Yeah. So instead of saying like the mullahs, we should just say basically the Khamenei dynasty, right?
Okay, yeah,
Because
yeah,
yeah, because other mullahs are like Rouhani is a mullah, and he's considered to be like the biggest traitor of them all, right? So it's not like
right.
you're not fighting the people who want to make sure that the supreme leader has the upper hand. They're not fighting for all mullahs. They're fighting for specific mullahs. And also, if you're part of the Bagheri camp, like for example, you're fighting for Mir Bagheri. Okay, so here the main mullahs who serve different camps would want them to be the spiritual leader. Okay, so you have the traditional Khamenei camp who want Mujtaba, right? Then you have the Paidari camp, which want Mir Bagheri as the spiritual leader of the country, and then you also have these people who think Alam al Huda. Alam al Huda is they see him as the main spiritual leader. Okay, and we also have Arafi, who is a high. He's a nobody. Okay, but might be if Moshtaba is killed, he might be the pick. Let me actually show you of the supreme leader because he is a nobody. So that's a good pick for IRGC, right? So like the people who want to make sure that the IRGC is serving a supreme leader rather than the other way around. So they're not fighting for people like this. They're not like the Rouhani is a traitor. Okay, Khatami is a traitor, and Hassan Khomeini, he's a traitor. So these are considered to be people who are liberals in their perspective, right? And they are
Mm.
like they want to have normal relationship with the West. So these are like the worst types of mullahs, right? But the top main mullahs who are considered like spirit potential for spiritual leaders are Mushtaba Khamenei, and then we have Alamul Huda here. And I don't know if Mir Bagheri has made it on the list because he's not, so I don't see him here. But Mir Bagheri for the Paidari camp. By the way, this Mahsuli guy here, he's the leader of the Paidari camp, but they're not putting their spiritual leader is not here. Okay. And then we have Arafi, sorry. Arafi as somebody who's not that big of a deal, but he would be a good puppet for the IRGC, right? So these are the main people we're talking about. Larijani was some as at some point. Sadiq Larijani is the brother of the now dead Ali Larijani. He used to. So at some point they were discussing him about the next supreme leader, but he was pushed aside and not that influential anymore. Especially now that his brother is dead. These are the people. And let me. The problem is that if it comes down to a battle between IRGC and any of these people's camps, like it's not much of a fight anymore, right? Because they don't have as much of a they don't have an army, right? So the division, the infighting that we should be more interested in at some point is IRGC versus IRGC, okay? Because this is the division that we should be hoping to see at some point, because right now most of the division that we're seeing is the Khamenei camp versus IRGC. Okay, we're saying the executive branch, like the president versus IRGC. We're saying Ghalibaf versus IRGC. Ghalibaf is somewhat IRGC, he has one foot in and one foot out, right? We see like the Council of Experts, the Assembly of Experts versus IRGC. We see Rouhani versus IRGC. We see Fatami versus IRGC. Okay, we see so many things like versus IRGC. We see like people are hoping for the Artesh at some point versus IRGC. Okay, but the biggest division of all that if we see shows a major crack is IRGC versus IRGC. That is what we that would be the ultimate division. But any of these other groups versus IRGC will win, except the Artesh, because the Artesh is armed. But other than the Artesh, anybody versus IRGC will just win. They don't even have a chance.
Yeah, I agree. But I'm thinking if I'm in one of those unarmed camps and I'm still looking for a way to return to power, my natural instinct would be to ally myself with an armed camp or a camp with outside support, or just try to take over in the post-fall chaos.
Say that again. Sorry. What would you do if
If
you
I'm
were
in
in
one
the
of those
unarmed?
unarmed camps that does not have the means to currently fight back against the IRGC, my instinct is going to be to try to ally myself with other groups
Oh,
that may have outside support or access to arms as a means to steal away the victory once they win, to try to come back in the chaos in the post fall regime. I don't expect they'll just lay down and say, okay, we're just gonna sit back and let whatever happens. They're gonna look for some way to try to come back to power, whether that's the Khomeini dynasty parties or the other parties that have been basically
yeah. I mean,
sidelined by the IRA.
they might try. I would just bet against them if they did.
And so you don't think that the pro democracy forces would ever consider working with them if it was in their benefit?
Oh, no, that's like such a.
Okay,
I think
that's
anybody
that's what I
from
was curious.
if the anti-regime Iranians, anybody that works with any of the Islamic Republic elements, then our side will call them a traitor,
Okay,
and will throw they would like that is a major red line, and for good reason, because we have had people who have been playing both siding it and at key moments backstabbing the revolution. So we have no trust for anybody that works with any elements of the regime.
yeah, and I
Other
think that
than
is the correct approach. Yeah.
yeah. Other than other than the people who are defecting. If they're defecting, then yes. But if they're still part of the regime, then no.
All right, thank you,
Yeah.
Shavicha.
No, thank you. Jarvis Shah.
All right, next is finally Jeffrey.
Yeah, there was so many things going on. I forgot what I was going to mention. Forgive me. All that to
About
say,
the
but
drones.
yeah. So with regards to long range drones, I gave you some of the stuff. We could talk about it later off record, off recording. So generally, here's what would need to be done to sustain track two material support efforts. Within the United States and Canada is assessed if every one of the United States and Canadians of Iranian descent donated 100 hours a week for 22 weeks, you would have enough money to build 12 fighting facilities, sustain non and lesser kinetic lines of effort indefinitely, and or set up to do other lines of effort we can talk about when the recorder's off. That when, so you're talking about after that. So constructing the facilities, probably about a month and a half, probably get it done quicker if you really wanted to. And or some of the other things you're talking about total time, maybe 40 weeks. After that, a lot of regime remnants are going to have a real fucking bad day.
Okay.
Oh, with regards to
Um,
the drones they're using, real quick. So one of the the threat, risk, and vulnerability assessments I did for retired elements, flag officers from the IDF and or broader Zionist movement, particularly regarding the threats posed by Shahed 136s is they adapt. It's not just so Ukraine provided the Gulf states, Israel, with their acoustic sensors to track like the flying lawnmower kind of noise that a Shahed generally makes. And that's true. That's helpful. Bad guys also do things like modify their drones to have, say, electric motors that do nap of the earth, like you mentioned. Sharp. I'm telling you, Armin, Ali's a really sharp kid. I like this kid. So they go nap of the earth, right, to hide in what's known as the radar horizon, so your radar can't detect you. And then when they detect you, they're almost right on top of you. Then it'll have, if it has a fast burn booster, to sprint to the target. So you don't have very much time. It's one of the other reasons why I kept pushing for directed energy based defenses, because the only way you're going to shoot those kinds of things down is with directed energy, right? Particularly those that are operating in the ultra short pulse mode, having on-site AI doing neuromorphic edge computing so that your OODA loop decision cycle kill chain is measured in like microseconds, because that's about what you'd have. That was real cool that you mentioned the acoustic sensors and stuff. That's cool. You're on your shit, man. I can't tell you, Ali, I'm proud. You make me proud. You and Armin make me proud every day.
Thank you. And then if you quickly could talk about how the Iranian people on the ground could be supported by the drones, and if they're precise enough not to cause mass casualties in the civilians.
I'll talk about that when it's not recorded.
All right, thank you. Next is Jewish Samantha.
Okay, to totally change the topic, if you had to pick, or are there, first a yes or no question, do you think that there are things that people should not be allowed to buy and sell on the free market?
Humans?
Yeah, the answer is yes. You don't think like
Yes,
things
yes.
bullshit.
Toothbrushes.
No.
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 Okay. All right.
Okay, so
Yes, I agree.
I was gonna say, what are like 3 items you think people shouldn't be allowed to then buy on free market?
Okay. Humans, I guess, body parts, right? Oh, nuclear material, I guess, like enriched uranium. Anything, weapons of mass destruction. Death contracts. Good, that's a good one, Ellie. Like paying for assassinations, for example. Like those types of services, assassination services. Oh, CP. I'm not going to say it because it's being recorded. CP. I hope you know what I mean. Torture videos. I'm sure if I keep thinking, the list could keep grow.
Took me a second, but yeah, I know what you mean by CP.
Yeah. Yep. So I'm sure if I keep thinking, the list will grow. But these are the things that are coming to my mind right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have more questions?
Are you mad at me?
Why would it? Wait, why would I be mad at you? These are interesting questions. Why would I be mad at you?
I don't know.
Okay, no, I'm not mad at you. I was actually enjoying this conversation. I was like, the questions are interesting, and I was hoping that you have more. Given that how good the questions were, I was like hoping that you ask me more. I was enjoying this. Do you have more? Do you have? I was gonna joke. If you don't have any more questions, I will be mad. But then I realized you might actually take that seriously, so I'm not gonna make that joke. All right. So, do you have more questions? Because these are interesting.
Do you think that there are things that like you should be allowed to sell in a national free market but not an international free market, if that makes sense?
Maybe temporarily, if something is for security reasons, you want to keep something internally. So for example, let's say you come up with, for example, I don't know, F-35s, for example, right? Or F-35s are being sold, like a specific type of advanced F-35 that United States would have said, yeah, we're not giving this to anybody. Or like AI model that is too advanced, you don't want China to get access to it, or a chip that is just technologically too advanced and you want to make sure that for security reasons other countries don't have access to it. So there are sometimes for security reasons certain weapons or certain advanced technologies that you want to keep it in your country and not let other countries have access to it.
So would you allow an F-35 to be sold to private individuals like Elon Musk or something?
And private individuals, probably not. Yeah, no. It's not about, maybe you could buy an older plane, but probably not something that could be reverse engineered. And
To be sold on, like, a national free market, you can sell it to anyone as long as they're, like, a fellow citizen of your country.
oh, oh, okay, no, you could sell it internally to
Yeah, any random citizen of your country, you just can't sell
no,
like a
no.
citizen of another country.
Oh yeah, I can't think of an example like that. I'm not against it if somebody could make the case for it. I just need to think about it more. I can't think of an example on top of my head right now for how that would make sense. Do you have an example that would make sense? I'm open to it if it could make sense. So
Off the top of my
let me
head, no, but I'm on the same vein of 'cause I mean, like, my toothbrush example, I'm like, if you wanna sell toothbrushes to people in Afghanistan or Somalia, like, I don't give a shit. Sell them toothbrushes and give them toothbrushes. We all need toothbrushes, but
So let me tell you something. I don't. I'm more of a consequentialist person rather than a principlist because I think you're looking for principles, and I have only one principle. I'm not a principlist, right? There's only one. Like everything else other than the one principle I have is based on consequences. So I don't. And sometimes there are certain things that are so reliably give you the same consequence that to me is like close to a principle but not actually a principle. Do you know what I mean? So sometimes certain things come really close to a principle for me, but to me, it's all about consequences. So you can't find like a general principle that I would be like, yeah, this always have to, always have to abide by this principle. I'm for everything that you could come up with as a principle. I think I could come up with examples in certain situations that it would not be a good idea. So I only have one principle, and everything else is based on consequences.
All right. We have Jeffrey and Sketch to respond in that order.
But I was waiting for Samantha to ask me what is that principle, but never mind.
Sorry, go ahead.
what is the
No, it's
principle,
okay.
Armin?
Thank you for asking. Okay. That principle, the only one principle is that increasing well-being for the highest number of people. So that is the only, and everything else comes to that. So when I judge whether or not something is good or bad, when I'm evaluating the consequences, if the consequences are that it's increasing the well-being for the highest number of people, basically reducing pain, misery, sadness, disease, poverty, whatever, and if it's increasing well-being, happiness, peace of mind, sense of security, health, all of that. So if it increases well-being for the highest number of people, that's a good thing. If it reduces that, that's a bad thing. That's the only principle, and everything else is based on whether the consequences are increasing well-being or reducing well-being. So saying that we should increase well-being, that's my only principle. Okay.
All right. Let's go with the responses. Jeffrey's first.
Oh yeah, just to outline the risk of, it's like adjacent to the question that was asked and what was said, like nuclear weapons. So in 2015, there is a French investigative reporter, if memory serves me correctly, that actually outlined there was like, I think it was in Budapest, maybe Moldova, where a guy had a thermonuclear warhead that he was selling and he kept it in a flower pot. So when he asked him that, he said, "You don't see anything wrong with selling thermonuclear warheads?" And his response was a very ANCAP response. He actually said this. He says, "No, that's what you push for, right? With regards to the Soviet era of the Cold War, is you was capitalism versus communism and or socialism, and you won. So what's the difference? We're just selling products and or commodities. That was his response. So there's a big difference between, say, anarcho, like fuck everybody beat me, anarcho capitalist, or say capitalism that is informed by enlightened self-interest that Armin is talking about, or say that very few people are ANCAP, and the ones that are usually like a few douche canoes in like the freshman year of their undergrad that read Atlas Shrugged, which, not saying that Ayn Rand wasn't a sharp lady, she was. And then because they read like a chapter of it, they think they discovered the secrets of the universe. I like how a lot of limousine socialists, when they read Das Kapital, and think they've discovered the secret of the universe. There's a reason Armin said what he said. Tragically, there are real world examples of people who just said everything should be for sale, from kiddie porn to nuclear weapons.
Yeah, there's 4 types of capitalism, and 3 of them are horrible. So we have laissez-faire capitalism, which basically everything goes, and then we have regulated capitalism, is a type of capitalism I support, and then we have state capitalism, like in China, and then we have crony capitalism, which does favoritism and all of that stuff. But the regulated capitalism is the one that I support.
All right, we are 2 minutes over time, so if you...
Oh, okay. All right, guys, I'm going to stop the recording.